Can 4 minutes of breathing actually rewire your brain? I know, it sounds like something you'd see on a 3 a.m. infomercial, a guy in a robe whispering at you about ancient warrior secrets. But here's what's different today. I have data. I took a functional brain scan before and after, and what appeared in the final images genuinely stopped me mid-sentence. I had to sit down. I had to stare at it for a full minute before I could even formulate what I was looking at. And here is what I'll tell you right now. There were two things in that scan that surprised me. The first one is what you're expecting. The stress markers, the amygdala readings, the wave patterns. I'll walk you through all of it. But the second thing, it had nothing to do with stress, nothing to do with focus. It was something else entirely, something I did not go looking for. And I'm going to show you that at the very end of this video, because if I show it to you now, the first thing won't land the way it should. Before I pull back the curtain on what 30 days of the Samurai breathing method actually did to my neural architecture, I want you to drop something in the comments right now. Here's the question. Do you think my focus improved dramatically, or do you think this is just another biohacker trend with a dramatic thumbnail? Leave your theory, seriously, because your answer, right now, before you've seen anything, is going to be fascinating to compare to what the scan actually revealed. Let's get into it. There's a phrase I carry with me into every piece of work I create here, and I want you to hear it before we go a single second further. We take the breath so we can grow the life. That is the MindTake Creed, and it is not poetry, it is not a tagline. It is a literal, physiological, neurological fact, and everything I'm about to share with you over the next several minutes is proof of exactly that. We take the breath and we grow the life. Today, you're going to watch me put that creed through one of the most personal experiments I have ever run on myself. The quest for modern Zen. Let me set the scene for you. It is early 2026. AI-generated everything has flooded every platform. Your phone knows what you want before you want it. You are receiving more information every 48 hours than a person in 1990 received in an entire year, and your nervous system is not built for that. I know this because I felt it. I am a doctor. I study the brain for a living, and yet I was waking up exhausted, going to bed wired, and finding that my so-called expertise was doing absolutely nothing to protect me from the low-grade chronic pressure that is the unofficial epidemic of this decade. Drop stress in the comments if you felt the weight of this year's pace before this video even started. I want to see how many of us are actually in this together. I had been tracking my cortisol levels for about 6 months. I had been watching my stress biomarkers creep upward, sleeping poorly, reaction times sluggish, creative output flattening, the kind of slow decline that is easy to normalize because it happens one bad morning at a time. And then, almost by accident, I found something. A breathwork practice that dates back to Japanese martial arts, specifically a technique called Ibuki breathing, the forced rhythmic exhalation used by karate practitioners and samurai as a method of grounding, mental focus, and physiological regulation before combat. 4 minutes. That is all the original protocol requires. 4 minutes that warriors used before going into battle, not because it felt nice, but because it worked. I had my before brain scan already completed as part of a separate research project. When I reviewed the imaging, the picture was clear. Elevated beta wave activity, a hyperactive amygdala, compressed theta wave output, a textbook portrait of a brain under chronic load. So I want you to guess something in the comments right now. If you had to put a number on it, what percentage drop in cortisol do you think is even possible from a 4-minute daily breathing practice? 5%? 20%? Higher? Leave your number. I will come back to it when we hit the data reveal. And on a cold Tuesday morning, I set the timer. Day 1. The ritual and the resistance. Here is exactly what the Samurai Ibuki protocol looks like. You inhale sharply through the nose, full chest expansion, diaphragm fully engaged, and then you release with a forced exhalation through the mouth. Not a sigh, not a controlled yoga breath, a deliberate, powerful hiss, the kind of sound that makes your dog tilt his head and leave the room. You hold the rhythm for 4 minutes. 60 seconds of silence follow each set. Tell me in the comments how the hiss felt. Tense, releasing, strange, powerful? Your first reaction to that sound is genuinely diagnostic. I want the raw data from as many people as possible. Now, days 1 through 10.
I will not soften this. By day 7, I was experiencing mild lightheadedness during the forced exhalation sets. Nothing dangerous. This is a well-documented response to the CO2 shift during rapid breathing cycles, but it was uncomfortable enough to create resistance. My mornings were already packed. I was telling myself I would do it later. Later never came. To anyone in this community with a fitness background, a meditation practice, or any experience carving a new physical habit into a schedule that is already full, I want your best strategy in the comments. What is the one thing that kept you going when a new practice was physically pushing back in those first 2 weeks? Because this is where most people stop, and this is exactly the moment the physiology says you should stay. By day 10, something measurable happened. My HRV monitor, a continuous wearable I've been using for 2 years, started showing a 3 to 4 millisecond improvement during the post-practice window. My resting heart rate dropped from 72 to 68. That is not coincidence. That is the vagus nerve beginning to calibrate. The midpoint neural shift. Day 15, the halfway mark, something happened that I had not predicted and cannot explain without going into the neuroscience, which I am absolutely going to because half this audience actually wants that level of detail. I sat down to write a research paper. Normally, this process involves 40 minutes of scattered warm-up and detour into email and eventually landing in productive flow somewhere in the second hour. On day 15, I was in full generative focus in 11 minutes. I timed it because it felt different, because something in my prefrontal cortex was just clearer, more available, like a channel that had been running static was suddenly clean. Here is what I believe was happening, and any neuroscientists, physiologists, or clinicians in this audience to add their insight in the comments. Seriously, build on this with me. The forced exhalation in the Ibuki method activates the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system through a specific vagal pathway. When you exhale forcefully, you create a rapid drop in thoracic pressure that directly stimulates vagal tone.
Practice daily. This begins to shift the baseline of your nervous system, not just during the 4 minutes, but across the entire day. The nervous system is trainable, full stop. Tell me in the comments, which single activity in your life do you most need this kind of clean mental state for right now? Work, a creative project, a relationship that needs your full presence? Name it, because knowing what you're building toward is the only thing that keeps a practice alive past week 2. My sleep data at day 15 was also showing movement. Average deep sleep increased by 22 minutes per night in the second half of that first 2 weeks. Sleep onset, the time it takes me to fall asleep after lights out, dropped from 26 minutes to under 14. 2 questions for the community. What wearable are you using in 2026 to track sleep and HRV? And do you think those sleep improvements are directly caused by the breath work, or is there a confounding variable I should be accounting for? This is the kind of conversation that makes this channel worth building. The valley before the summit. I need to tell you about day 22, because not every day of this experiment felt like progress. Day 22 was a Thursday. I had an early patient call, back-to-back meetings that ran 3 hours over, and I ended the afternoon with a migraine that had been building since noon. I sat down at 9:47 p.m. to do my 4 minutes, and I quit after 90 seconds. I just stopped, sat there in the dark, told myself the data was already good enough, that missing 1 day wouldn't matter, that I would do double tomorrow. I didn't do double tomorrow. I did exactly 4 minutes, same as always, and I almost didn't do those 4 minutes either. I'm telling you this because if you start the 7-day challenge I'm about to give you, there will be a version of day 22 waiting for you somewhere in the first 2 weeks, a night where the practice feels pointless and small and like the least important thing in your life. That night is not assigned to stop. That night is the practice. The samurai did not do their pre-battle ritual only when they felt ready. They did it because they didn't. And on day 23, I did 4 minutes. And on day 30, I got my second scan. The 30-day data reveal. Day 30, second brain scan. I'm going to describe what I saw before I show you, because the verbal setup matters. In the before scan, the amygdala, your brain's primary threat detection and stress response center, was running hot, active, the kind of amygdala activation pattern I associate clinically with someone under sustained occupational stress. In the after scan, the amygdala had cooled.
Not turned off, not suppressed, calibrated. The activation pattern had normalized in a way I would clinically associate with someone who has been meditating consistently for years, not weeks, years. Type calm in the comments if you can see the difference when I show the side by side, because the visual contrast is stark enough that no medical background is required to read it. Now, the wave patterns. Alpha waves associated with relaxed and present attention, the mental signature of someone in the zone without being drowsy, showed a 31% increase in amplitude at my resting baseline. Theta waves associated with creative insight, intuitive processing, and the state that master meditators access while fully conscious showed a 19% increase at baseline. To say that in plain language, my resting brain after 30 days looked measurably more like the brain of an experienced meditator than the brain of a doctor who had just come through a demanding quarter. Do you believe 4 minutes a day is a fair trade for that? Leave your answer. I want to see it. Because I understand the skepticism. I had it too. And then I looked at the imaging. But before we leave the data, I need to tell you about day 28, because this was the moment that the scan could not capture. I was in a meeting, a difficult one. Someone challenged my published work publicly in front of colleagues I respected. My older self, elevated cortisol, overactive amygdala, high beta brain, would have flushed defensive and said something I'd be walking back for a week. Instead, I felt space. A beat of distance between the moment and my response. I watched myself choose something measured, and I moved forward. That is not in any scan, but it was the most important data point of the entire 30 days. Open a story time in the comments right now. Share a recent moment where you wish you had had that space between what happened and what you said or did. No names needed, just the situation, because this community needs to see how universal that experience actually is. Now, the second thing I promised you at the start, the unexpected finding. When the neurologist reviewed my after scan alongside the before scan, she flagged something neither of us had been looking for. My prefrontal cortex, specifically the dorsolateral region associated with working memory, long-range planning, and executive decision-making, showed a measurable increase in gray matter density markers compared to the baseline scan. Gray matter density in 30 days. She told me in a controlled research setting she would want 90 days and a larger sample before drawing conclusions. And I agree with her. This is one person, one experiment. The rigorous science is not finished, but the signal is there. And I thought you deserved to see it. Legacy of the breath. Here is the 4-minute Samurai Ibuki protocol, exactly as I ran it every morning for 30 days. Step 1. Sit upright, feet flat on the floor, hands rested open on your thighs. Close your eyes. Step 2. Inhale through the nose for 4 counts. Full chest and belly expansion. Do not rush it. Step 3. Exhale through the mouth with deliberate force, a controlled hiss, full expulsion of air, every count. Step 4. Pause for 2 full counts at the bottom of the exhale. Let your system register the stillness before the next breath. Step 5. Repeat that cycle for 4 minutes. Step 6. After the final exhale, sit in complete silence for 60 seconds. Eyes closed. No phone, no sound, just the breath that remains. Do this before your first screen interaction of the day, before email, before the news, before whatever the algorithm has waiting for you. That is the full protocol, and today I'm opening a 7-day Samurai Start for this entire community. Here's how it works. You run the protocol once a day for 7 days, and once a day you come back to the comments section of this video and leave one sentence. Day 1, how did it feel? Day 4, easier or harder? Day 7, what shifted, even slightly? If enough of you join, this comment section stops being a comment section and becomes something rarer, a real-time, community-wide experiment, hundreds or thousands of individual data points running in parallel, building a picture of what this practice actually does across different lives, ages, schedules, and stress loads. To lock in, type in the comments. That's all, one word, and watch this thread. Let me say one more thing before we close. We are living through what I believe is the most sustained information overload event in the history of the human nervous system. The volume, the speed, the decisions. The low-grade hum of a world accelerating faster than our biology was built to process. Ancient practices were not created in comfortable times. They were built by people under mortal pressure who needed tools that worked, not because they were beautiful, but because their lives depended on the clarity those tools created. The Ibuki breath was not a wellness trend for the samurai. It was a survival technology. And the vagus nerve doesn't know what year it is. The amygdala responds to the same inputs it has responded to for 200,000 years. A forced exhalation is a forced exhalation, whether you are standing in a 14th century dojo in Kyoto or sitting at your desk in 2026. Your biology is listening. And here's the final question I will leave you with. What other ancient practice do you want to see me put through this same protocol? Bring me the strange ones, the ones that seem ridiculous on the surface, the ones you've always been curious about but never committed to. That is exactly the territory this channel exists to explore. Because we don't accept information at face value here. We take it, we test it, and we grow from it. If you stayed to the end of this video, you now know more about your own neurology than most people gather in a decade of passive reading. Hit the subscribe button, not for me, but because the next experiment is already running, and you will want to be in the room when those results come in. The full 30-day tracking protocol, the wearable stack I used, and the gray matter data reference sheet are all linked in the description below. No paywall. Take everything. And before you move to the next thing, carry this with you. We take the breath so we can grow the life. See you in the comments.